Hey guys, it's Tim and this is Wrestling Unlimited. As in this video, I'm going to show you how I created my graphics for AEW Dynamite based on their new graphics and the new logo that they did come out with last week. Now, this isn't a one-for-one, 100% same exact recreation, but it's kind of close with my own little twist on it. So with that, let's jump into Photoshop, and I'll show you how to do it there, just making a static graphic. And then in the second part video later this week, I'll show you how to take it into After Effects and animate it. But right now, let's jump into Photoshop. So we're here in Photoshop, and the first thing we want to do is open up a new project at 1920 by 1080. Now we're going to create our background. So what I want to do is grab our text tool over here. Either grab it off of your tools panel, or you could just hit the T button and type it in. And we're going to type Dynamite, D-Y, Dynamite. And then going to make it big, like really big, to cover almost the entire screen. So it's too big, so I'm going to hit the T, Control T. So it's too big, so I'm going to hit Control T on my keyboard so I can bring it down. We're going to center that. Then I'm going to open my character panel here. It could be somewhere else for you. If you don't see it, you go to Windows, Character, and it'll pop up wherever it's at for you. And I'm going to turn off the boldness. I am going to change the height a little bit. I want it a little taller than it actually is. I'm going to go 130. I'm going to spread my... Actually, I'm going to bring my letters in just a little bit. Let's go -20, so they're closer to each other. And maybe not 130. Maybe I'll do like 115. But I want the letters just tall. It's just something I'm feeling. So now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a color palette. I'm going to get my rectangle tool over here. And I'm just going to create a square. And I'm actually going to create 4 of these in 4 different colors. So first off, we're just going to duplicate them. 1. Control J on your keyboard to duplicate. 2, 3, 4. This has no bearing on anything other. It's going to... Only thing this is going to do is doing this is going to make it a lot easier later when we're shifting colors for brushes really quickly. So then we're going to change the colors on 3 of them. This next one's going to be a pink color. So I'm going to go F1, 3, 6, A, 8. I already have the colors I wanted picked out pre ahead of time. I'm going to do a light blue, 4, 7, D, 0, 7. I'm also going to do a darker blue or a normal blue. Some may say 363 FE7. I'm then going to just for the heck of it, I'm putting them in a folder, a group, so they don't get messed with. And I'm going to lock them so that way they don't get messed with. Now here's what we're going to do. We have our Dynamite layer here, the text layer. You can leave that there. And I'm going to create 3 new layers. So you can either hit the create new layer button down at the bottom, or you can just click Control Shift N. Make 3 of these. Then I'm going to make sure that they all have what is called clipping mask. So you hold Alt on your keyboard and click literally right between the 2 layers. We're going to do that with all 3. That way, whatever shows up on these layers 1, 2, and 3 will only show within inside the layer they are clipped to. As we see here, we're going to grab our brush. We're going to grab our paintbrush. You can either hit it over here on the side in your tools panel, or you can hit B on your keyboard. And then we're going to change our brush. So what I'm using are, and you can either change your brush by going to the top here and finding your brushes, but what I usually like to do is I just right click on my project and your brushes come up there. We're going to get what are called explosion brushes. Maybe they're called dust brushes. Maybe you have it named something different. But I got my brushes from Envato Elements. That is a paid service. But all you really have to do is type in like color explosion brush or dust brush or just explosion brush. Even a powder brush would work. And I'm just going to start. So I'm going to change the size here. And also, as you see, my text is purple, so this color can't be purple. I'm going to hit I on my keyboard to bring up the eyedropper tool, and I'm going to go pink. I'm going to go back to our brushes with B. I'm going to play around here. We're just going to hit our brushes. I don't like that brush. And now also, you got to be careful when you're downloading random brush packs because some brushes may have certain settings on them that you don't like, and they're a pain to change. So just be careful with that. Like I didn't like that one brush there, but we're going to grab this brush, pink. And the reason I did 3 different layers because each of these layers is going to be for a different color. So I'm going to go pink on this layer. Then my next layer is going to be the light blue, the baby blue. So I'm going to hit I on my keyboard. Change it to that color. Then we're going to get another brush. Maybe we'll try this one here. Make it a little smaller and just boom there. Boom there. Not really liking that brush. You just play with it. We try out this brush. Not really liking that one for this. Maybe we go back into this pack and check these brushes here. Better. And then remember, you can also adjust the angle if maybe you want it going in one specific way. And then my third one, we're going to make it the blue. I'm going to pick a different brush again. This one's more of just a speckle or dust brush. Just to get a little bit of that blue on here. We're just going to play with it. And there we go. So we have that. Now what I'm going to do is, purple's my base here. I'm going to create 3 with purple as my base. Then I'm going to create 3 with pink as my base, 3 with light blue as my base, and 3 with the dark blue as my base. And then we're going to jump back in and I'll show you how to set those up as your background. So I'm going to fast forward this part of the video so you guys don't have to sit through this and see me doing all this little tedious work, because this is really tedious if you're like me and you're like super hyper focused on it as far as wanting it to look a specific way, because you could do this however you want. This is really personal preference here as far as making it look exactly how you want. Don't have to make it look like mine. You can make it look however you want with any brushes and any colors you really want. I based this off of how the actual AEW ones look, sort of, and then kind of made it work for what I wanted. So let's fast forward and get to the next part. Okay, so now that we have this completed, and you have your essentially 12, 3 times 4, 12 sets of dynamite, we want to duplicate all of them. We want to duplicate them all. So the easiest way to do that, there's 2 ways to do that are pretty easy. All you have to do is select all of your groups or your folders, whatever you want to call them, the groups, but from your layers panel, and either drag them down here to the create new layer, or just simply select them all and click Control J. Now what you're going to want to do, and there may be an easier way to do this than I'm about to tell you, but all you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up your folders, go to your first one, your first dynamite. So you're going to want to make sure everything else is turned off above it, so you see your first dynamite. You want to control click right on this T here so it selects your actual text. We're then going to go to select, modify, contract. We're going to go like 10 pixels. We're going to bring that in. We're then going to go down here and click layer mask. We are then going to click Control I to invert that layer mask. And all you want basically is the outline. We're going to do that for all of our layers here. And now to make this even easier, we're going to do this for all of our layers. But all you have to do now, because you have your one layer mask selected, open up your next folder, go to your dynamite, hold Alt on your keyboard, drag that layer mask up, and boom, It's right there. We're going to do that for everything. Now that we have all these done, we can also unlock our color palette here. We don't need it anymore and just delete it. So now the next thing we're going to do is turn all these off for a second, and we are going to get our background color. We want a dark, deep, dark blue. We're going to go over here to our foreground color. We're going to type 203156. Now, all you got to do to put that foreground on this white, hold Alt and hit backspace. If you were to click Control backspace, that's going to give you your background color. But because the dark blue we want is our foreground color, Alt backspace. Boom, there we go. Now that we have our blue on our background, what we're going to do is we are going to open up one of our colors, one of our Dynamites, and I'm going to resize it. We're going to see exactly how big or small we want it. This is personal preference. You can make it as big or as small as you want it to say Dynamite in your background. I'm just drop it down 50% to see. Okay, I want it smaller, maybe 30%. I want it a little bit smaller, maybe 25%. I think I'm liking that. And I'm going to do that for all the rest of them as well. So now the next thing we want to do is we want to put our colors together, basically. So you have your purples. Then we also have our purples with the outline. What I'm going to want to do, I'm going to rename some of these. I'm going to go purple. I'm just going to name them out. I'm going to add out to all of these, just so I know that they're the outlined ones. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bring them down here. We're going to alternate. Solid, outline, solid, outline, solid, outline. And we can turn them all on. And one by one, what we're going to do, actually, I'm going to grab them all at first and drag them all over. And then we're going to grab them all, except for our bottom one. We're going to drag them over. Now, the distance between, again, personal preference. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go 2. So I'm holding down the space key and hitting my right arrow. When you hold down the space key, instead of moving 1 pixel at a time, you're moving 10 pixels at a time. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to line them up, and we're going to move 2, 1, 2. Now, one cool thing you can do with Photoshop is, as you see here, we're dragging it over, holding shift so it stays straight. If you go slow enough, you will see these little pink boxes pop up that say 4.87. It knows the distance you have between these, and it'll help you line them up there without having to really do too much anymore. Then we are going to move everything down just a little bit. We're going to move these over so I can see that end. And so then we are going to take our last layer here, line it up. 1, 2. We're going to take this all the way up to the top, if it'll drag. Sometimes it drags, sometimes it doesn't. And now we're going to duplicate this. We're going to do something here. What I now want to do is I want to invert. Where there is a solid, I want an outlined one. Where there is an outlined one, I want a solid one. So we're going to switch that around. And we're going to move it back up to the top. Line them up here. I'm going to go 1, 2. I'm going to go 3. And we're going to do that, 2 like that, for all of our colors. So we're going to fast forward so you don't have to sit here and watch me do this forever. And we'll be right back. Okay, so now that that is all done, as you see, there's still a little gap down here at the end. So all I am going to do is I'm going to take my pink, or my purple, I mean, from the top, and I'm just going to bring that layer all the way down. And we should be good. Actually, I messed up here a couple of times. So this is a good thing for me to show you. If you look here, the gap gets smaller and smaller. So I messed up on a couple of these on my spacing. So some of these I accidentally only did 2. It's still not going to make it enough to where I don't need to bring the top line back down, but it'll just make it a little bit better. Now we're more even, and that is our background. So now I'm going to take all of these, select them all, hold Control and hit G, and there we go. I'm going to name it BG Text. Always label your stuff. So like this one down here, I didn't label. I'm just going to name it BG Blue. Now that we have this placed how we want it, we're going to start bringing in some layers and making it look cool. The first thing I'm going to bring in is, it's like a grungy glass texture, I guess you can call it. We're going to drag it right into our project here. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees, and we're just going to scale it up so it fills the entire project. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to take away the darks. If you've watched any of my other videos, I've taught you guys this before. You go to our blending modes, take away the darks, you go to screen. Now, screen's always the one that I try first, but I'm not quite liking it. So you can check all the other ones. You can go lighten color. That's not too bad. Linear dodge, no. Color dodge, messing with the colors. Or you can go to lighten. I'm liking either lighten or linear dodge. I'm liking lighten better, so we're going to leave it on that. I also don't like this big dot here, this big circle. I'm going to select my grunge texture, Control T to transform, and we're just going to first move it over and see if we can just move it enough. Nope. We're going to have to scale it up just a little bit. Make sure you're scaling your height and width together. We're just going to bring it. That should be good right there. And if you want, also, you can lower the opacity. Maybe bring it to like 75. Now, the next thing we're going to do, we're going to grab our blue background, our BG blue, and make a new layer off of it. Duplicate it either by bringing it down to the new layer or just clicking Control J. We're then going to bring it to the very top and click Control T. You are then going to shrink it down. Make sure that your height and width are linked and bring it down. Now, this is personal preference, how big you want this square to be in your background. You can leave it like that. You could bring it down to 80%. Maybe you want it even smaller. I'm going to leave it at 90 and go from there. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some more layers. I'm going to drop in this asphalt layer here. I'm going to bring it. I want this to be, it doesn't have to fill the whole composition, but it at least needs to be bigger than this blue square rectangle, whatever we just created. We are going to leave it at that. I'm going to create a clipping mask with it so that it only affects this blue layer. And then I'm going to take my blending mode, drop it down to soft light. I'm also going to bring my opacity down a little bit, maybe to like 80, maybe 70. And then going to grab another layer here, or another texture. It's grunge. We're going to scale this up. We're going to also make it a clipping mask. Then I'm going to invert the colors on it. Click Control I to invert the colors to make it more white than just the gray that it is. I'm also going to click Control L to bring up the levels. And if you grab this one here on the right, this node, I guess you call it a node or a slider. The more you bring it to the left, the lighter it's going to get. So you can brighten that up how you like as well. And then click OK. Then you can play around with your blending modes here. Do however you like. Maybe you want an overlay or a soft light. Maybe you like vivid light on it. But I'm not going to mess with that at all. And I'm just going to bring the opacity down to about 50%. So from there, we've got all that good. Now, one thing that AEW did was they have text that goes across here and across here on the bottom that just says All Elite Wrestling repeating. So I'm going to make my foreground color white. I'm going to grab my type tool. And you see what just happened there. Because we have all that text in our background, my text tool, my type tool, selected that in the background. We don't want that. So what we can do is lock the text layer here. So now, when we select, it's not going to let us select. So let's just turn that off for now. Actually, yeah, let's just turn that off for now. We don't need it for this second. Let's just create a new layer. Type in All Elite Wrestling. This is just a very, very simple font. Open your character panel here. I'm literally just going to grab an Arial font. I'm going to put all of this stuff at like default. And then I'm going to bring, I don't know, 50. I even want it smaller than that. Let's go 40. I'm going to add a little bit of bold to it. And then I'm going to just copy and paste till this fills up the entire width of the project here. Also make it a clipping mask as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have it to where it doesn't quite go off over here on the right, but it's just over a little bit. We're going to duplicate Control G, or Control J, I mean. Make it a clipping mask. Bring it down, and we're going to do the same thing where it doesn't go all the way off on the right side. Move it over maybe about there. If we throw this back on, that's what we have so far. So now what we want to do is we want to bring our wrestlers in. The Samoa Joe. We've got Wardlow, so I want Joe above Wardlow. I'm going to move Joe over. Actually, I've got Wardlow selected, so let's move Wardlow over. Oop, moved him a little too far. Move him to the right here. Center those both how I want them. Maybe about there. Bring them in a little bit. Wardlow in a little bit. Center them back up. And so now the next thing that I'm going to want to do is, I don't like how the coloring on them looks compared to everything else. It's got somewhat of like a blue tone to it. What I want to do with the layer already created as a smart object, because we dragged it in. When you drag a layer into Photoshop, it automatically becomes a smart object. If it's not, you can right click it. Or let's go to one that's not. Right click it. And it's not going to do it on a text layer. Give me like this background layer. Right click it. Usually you could see right here. Convert to smart object. Now mine says Shift Control Q. I've actually changed that to a personal preference. But yeah. Right click. Convert to smart object. I'm still getting used to the new Photoshop. They've moved some stuff around. So usually it was more up here. Convert to smart object. But they've moved it down. So with it as a smart object, we're going to go filter, camera raw. And this is where we could do some photo editing stuff. But really all I want to do right now is give it more of a blue feel. Not a lot, just a little bit. Just a little bit. We're going to come back in here later and play with it as well. You could skip this step for now and come back later. Also, what you can do for the Joe is grab the one off the Wardlow, Alt, drag, and it'll duplicate it up there. Now what we're going to do again, we're going to duplicate our background, Control J, bring it all the way to the top, and we're going to create a layer mask. We're going to create a layer mask on it. We're then going to go to our gradient over here, and we're going to make sure we have a black to white gradient. White to black, black to white. It doesn't matter really. Black to white, white to black. And we are going to, with the layer mask selected, that is a big thing you need to know right now. With the layer mask selected, we're then going to draw up a gradient. Now, if you see, that's not what I wanted. We're going to start from the top instead. And basically what you're doing is you're creating maybe like something called a glow or a haze, but something to cover the bottom of the layer here. If you don't like how that looks, you can just edit, undo. Just try again. So now that we have that selected, or created, I mean, we're going to bring in some more textures. One more texture, now that I'm looking at it. And really all you're going to do, we're not even going to bring anything in. We already have it here. It's that glassish grunge. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to bring it to the top. And then we're going to alt drag our layer mask right onto that. And then what you can do is you can leave it like that. Or if you want it less, we're going to alt backspace with our layer mask selected. So that way it basically deletes the layer mask. Get our gradient and play with how much of this you want shown. Maybe you want to start higher and show less. We're going to go about right about there is what I'm liking. I'm then going to drag in another image here. This is actually like a car paint texture. But what I like about this is, again, it's got the blue overtones that we're working with, but it also has this light coming in from the top here. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. And we are going to change our blending mode to soft light. Then I'm going to drop the opacity a little bit, maybe down to like 50. And what you could also do is you can also maybe put this under those layers that we just created here. You could put it above. It's total preference. Again, all of this is, what are you liking? What are you not liking? What do you want to do? What do you not want to do? Follow this to a T, follow it a little bit, learn one or two things, go off on your own. It's really a lot of personal preference. And we're almost done. So the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to create text. So we're going to turn that background text off again, just so we don't mess with it or anything. And I'm going to get a text file, or not a file, but text layer created, and just type in Samoa Joe. I'm going to use a font that is called Go Bold. For this, I'm going to use Go Bold Regular. Or Go Bold Bold Regular. Increase the size. Kind of center it on Joe. Sure, it's all selected. Bring up your character panel. Gonna do some modifications to it. Bring our letters in a little bit. Raise the height up just by 10. And then we're gonna do the same thing. You can duplicate the, well, actually, before you do that, I'm gonna add a drop shadow to it. I'm actually gonna add at 100% normal, and we're gonna bring the size up to about 50. Man, maybe go 30. No, I like 50. Bring that down a little bit. Duplicate it, Control J. Bring it over here. Just type in Wardlow. Center them up, or however you want them. Personally, up to you. Now, we're going to duplicate the Wardlow again. We're going to clear our layer styles. We don't need the drop shadow. And I'm going to change the color of this to our light blue. And I'm going to put AEW World Championship. I'm going to go back to our character panel, turn the bold off on it. I'm going to also make it smaller, maybe like 70. I'm then going to change our foreground color to our purple. No, the dark blue from our background. Sorry about that. 156. I'm going to create a rectangle. So grab your rectangle tool right around this. Boom. You can say, why are you covering the text? I'm not. We're going to drop that down behind the text. Now, the next thing I want to do with that is I want to Control T to bring up our transform options. And I'm going to unlink our height and width. With my width, I want to bring it out 110, maybe even 105. Just a little bit of padding. And then we're going to raise up our height till the padding basically resembles and equals what we have there. We can move our font around a little bit and go like that. Now what I want to do with this is the fill, I want to put it at like 70%. on our background rectangle, not the font. 70%. And I want to double click on our rectangle, and I want to add a stroke. We're going to make it our purple color 712 BC7. We're going to jump that thing up to like 10. Put it on the outside. 10's maybe too much. Let's go 5. Perfect. I'm still not liking the positioning here, but boom, boom, boom. There we go. So then what you can do now is take those 2 top layers, Control G, group them so they're all together, and just name this like title text or something. Just whatever you want. Center it up how you like. Grab our Dynamite logo and drop that in. We are then going to right-click on our Samoa Joe or our Wardlow, whichever one of those. Copy layer style on our title text folder. We're going to paste the layer style so we get that drop shadow. We're going to do the same thing on our Dynamite logo. Paste layer style. Now, for some reason, they look more than I want on those layers, so we can double-click into them, drop them down maybe to 30. The same thing on Samoa Joe. Drop that one down to 30 as well. Then we can take all of those, group them together, Control G, and just name it front text or front info. Place it wherever you'd like. Now that we have that placed there, we can also play around with the positioning of our wrestlers. We bring Wardlow in a little bit as well. And now what we're going to do, we're almost done here. Turn your background layer on to see how that looks. We're going to add a LUT. A LUT is, in layman's terms, it's going to add a file over everything, basically, or depending on where you place it on your layer panel. And it's going to affect the coloring. I don't really know the perfect way to describe a LUT, but you'll see once we get to it. Color look. So you want to go to your adjustments, color lookup. In your properties panel, you're going to drop down your first one that says 3D LUT file. You're going to drop down the drop down menu and click the first one. Load 3D LUT. They're going to load our LUT. This is the one that I have pre-selected. We got that there. So now what we need to do is go back into our camera filter and adjust our wrestlers. Because you see there, Joe is fine. Wardlow, I'm not quite liking. He's got a little too much darks and shadows on him. So we're going to go filter, camera raw filter. And I clicked the wrong one. Now, here's where we're really going to have to play with it and go in and out. Because when we click camera raw filter, we're not going to see it affected by the actual LUT. We're only seeing that layer. So what I want to do is maybe bring the exposure of Wardlow up just a little bit. I'm going to bring his temperature down. Maybe raise his highlights a tiny bit. His shadows, bring them up a little bit. And click OK and just check on that. Not quite liking. It's better, but I'm not fully liking it. Also, I did mess up. I did mess up here. You see how we now have 2 different camera raw filters? Edit undo. And then go back in and just double click the first camera raw. And there we go. So let's play with this. Maybe bring our contrast up a little bit. Again, this is all personal preference. You can also do this to see the difference. Original compared to our edit right now. And so what we can also try to do is we can go here on Joe, delete smart filter, bring the Wardlow one up and go from there. You can also take these layers because I know these are affecting it. Bring them down just a little bit. And just keep tweaking it, working it, and getting what you actually like. Maybe you don't like the LUT. You want to try a different LUT. Maybe you want to go back into the camera raw filter and not bring the temperature down, leave it on the at 0 and see if you like that better. It's a lot of just playing with it and seeing what you like, what you don't like. Maybe bring the exposure up, but when you bring the exposure up, maybe drop those shadows down a little bit. Maybe drop the highlights down a little bit. Maybe add a little more to your blacks. Take some out of your whites. Again, you're just tweaking it, playing with it until you get something that you actually like. So I'm going to bring this down some more. I'm going to bring them both in a little bit so they're closer to each other. Kind of center them up. And you can create this, I guess we'll call it a lower third, however you want. You can have it say Smojo versus Wardlow. You can have it to where the Dynamite logo is higher up between them. Again, a lot of this is personal preference. You can bring it up, higher here, have more of a gap between everything. It's just what you like and what you want to do. So have fun with it, play with it, and get it to something that you enjoy. So with that, that is how I created my AEW Dynamite graphics here in Photoshop. Remember, all the project files and all the assets that we did use are available on our Patreon, patreon.com/PWUnlimited. In the next video that will be out later this week, we will be taking this Photoshop file into After Effects, and I will show you how to fully animate everything over there as well. But now I say, I want to see what you create. I want to see what you guys create based off of watching this tutorial. So tweet it to us, post it on Instagram, tag us, whether you tag me personally at TammyBuddy, whether you tag at PWUnlimited. I want to see what you guys create based off of this tutorial. So with that, I hope you guys had a good time and potentially learned something watching this video, and I can't wait to see what you guys create.